Hello, everyone. Good to see you face to face, or at least mask to mask today. I'm here to address our government's commitment to better education. As you know by now, it has been announced that remaining bills would not proceed this fall. This includes Bill 64. This year and this past year, we have undertaken significant public engagement with Manitobans to discuss our Better Education Starts Today strategy, which was created in response to the K-12 Review Commission's report. We've heard from thousands of Manitobans, hundreds of teachers, educators, parents, and stakeholders to gather feedback about our Better Education Starts Today strategy. This engagement is crucial as we plan for a way to ensure that we deliver the best results for our students. This engagement will continue through the various advisory groups and committees that have been established and that will be established. We have heard from Manitobans that change in education is needed. Manitobans want a system that is accountable for results and ensures all students have a chance to succeed regardless of where they live. The governance model was such a focus that it distracted from the shared priorities that would improve education and student outcomes. At this time, we are pausing some of this work as we focus on COVID-19 and the return to classes amid the fourth wave. The health and safety of students and staff is paramount, and that is where our collective focus needs to be. We have announced many initiatives and have more planned, such as continuing our work on a new funding model, launching the curriculum framework review, the Teacher Idea Fund underway as we seek additional innovation in our classrooms. And we will continue to consult with our education partners on how we can improve education to the benefit of all students. I want to thank everyone who has been involved to date in this process. We all want to see improved education in Manitoba. We will be looking to consult further on delivering better education for Manitoba students. We are listening, and we will continue to be a government that looks to work with Manitobans. We look forward to working with education stakeholders and parents to achieve the best possible results for our students. With that, I'd be happy to take your questions.
Minister, what exactly is being put on pause here? Bill 64 is being scrapped. What does this mean for the K-12 review document, for the best strategy, and what work is being paused?
Yeah, I think, first of all, let me be clear, the governance model was certainly a lightning rod. We recognize that. So we are scrapping Bill 64. Obviously, we heard that from Manitobans. Consultation is clearly important. We will continue to engage Manitobans as we move forward. I think as we've said before, putting our strategy forward to Manitobans, this is a journey. It's not a sprint, it's a journey. So it's about priorities right now. And clearly our priorities, I want to make sure our students and staff are safe over the next few months as we battle the fourth wave. We will be announcing some additional task forces as we go forward. Again, they will work with our stakeholders as we go forward, but we want to go cautiously. We will be continuing to gather information, and we do want to have a clean slate whenever our new leader is selected come the end of October. So certainly work will continue on that front.
Minister, you've been pushing this bill since March when it was introduced, doing a lot of engagement. At what point did you realize this thing was going to was going to need to be killed or killed? What point did you realize this wasn't going to go forward any further? And was there a specific tipping point for you on that?
Yeah, I don't know if there was I can't speak to a specific point on that. Clearly, we spent a lot of time. I engaged teachers in every school division of the province. We reached out. We had a number of town halls with Manitobans. We engaged our parental engagement task force. Clearly, our MLAs and our ministers were hearing feedback from Manitobans and from stakeholders. And I think once we got an opportunity to collectively get together and discuss our options, it became quite clear that people were not satisfied with the governance model we had in Bill 64. So those conversations just happened over the last several weeks.
With the killing of this bill, does that mean there's not going to be any changes to the structure of education in Manitoba? By that I mean, does that mean putting on hold any amalgamation of school districts or anything like that? Is this what we're going to have now for going forward, or are we going to see a future generation of Bill 64 that takes into consideration different parts of governance and looking to maybe shrink the number of school districts?
Yeah, great question. I think this is an opportunity for us just to pause and reflect on what we've heard. We will continue the dialogue. I know the discussion and the governance model has created some tensions with our stakeholders. I think this is a real opportunity for us to build those relationships, gather their input. Certainly my role as a minister will be to gather information, clear the table for the new leader, and provide as much information as I can to the new leader. So I'm not going to prescribe what might come forward under the new leader and potentially a new cabinet. And we'll leave that direction up to them. But in the meantime, we certainly have learned a lot in the last couple of years in our consultations. When we put all that information together and make that available to the new leader and again, potentially the new cabinet.
Hi, Minister. Who else will you be consulting with? You said there might be some more groups that the province might look for guidance on the education reform.
Yeah, for sure. Just to name one, for example, poverty has been a big issue that was raised in the K-12 report, and it's certainly been raised with Manitoba Teachers Society. We think that that's important. We're close to finalizing a group that would spearhead the relationship between poverty and education. I think we'll announce that fairly soon. For instance, they will have conversations with a lot of individuals in the community that we maybe haven't talked to already in terms of the poverty side. The goal would have that organization report to our Poverty Reduction Committee of Cabinet, so that we're looking at this thing in a holistic approach. So that's just one example of some of the important work that has to be done. We've indicated as well we're going to have a curriculum review panel established. We haven't done that for 25 years. We'll have a look at that, putting those people in place over the next little while. Again, they will take some time to do their assessment and work with stakeholders in the community.
And what do you say to some parents, teachers, advocates who might be skeptical of the future? Because, as you mentioned, there were some shared priorities in the K-12 review that the province did take into account. You called the governance model a distraction. But some people are, still prepared to gear up for a fight in the coming days.
Yeah, no, I see this as an opportunity for us to really build the relationships that may have been tarnished over the past debate over Bill 64. Clearly our strategy that we've laid out, 4 pillars in there. There was only half of one of those 4 pillars that, in terms of the governance model, that I think was the lightning rod. I think there's a lot of good work ahead of us. There is a lot of work ahead of us. Manitobans have told us they want a better education system, and we're prepared to do that work. And we want to engage parents and stakeholders in achieving ultimately what it's all about. It's about success for our students.
We're going to go to the phones now.
Can I ask one more question?
After. Is that
Sure.
great?
Thank you. A reminder to our reporters on the line, you will have one preliminary and one follow-up question. Up first this afternoon from CTV Winnipeg, Jeff.
Hi, Mr. Minister. I'm just curious. Former Premier Pallister said, one of the reasons for eliminating school trustees is, the fact the government was taking away their power and authority to levy taxes. He kind of tied the two together. Being that you're pausing and the whole this, and especially the governance side, is the government still moving forward with the phase out of education property taxes then?
Yes, that's not associated with the legislation or the strategy. That's a separate initiative. We think there's a better way to fund education here in Manitoba. We signaled a 25% reduction for property owners, homeowners this year, another 25% next year. So we will continue with that mandate.
Thank you for that. And you talked about continuing to engage with stakeholders. I'm just curious, are you kind of, going back to the drawing board and using the K-12 review as a starting point? Is that the plan here? And I know you don't want to prescribe anything, but do you envision the next leader, and whoever the cabinet is coming forward, and whoever the education minister is, coming forward with another bill?
Yeah, I don't really want to prescribe what may happen in the future. Clearly, we have agreed to in principle, the 75 recommendations in the K-12 report. We use that as a basis for putting together a strategy. I think the strategy in terms of providing better outcomes for students is sound. And on that basis, I think we continue those dialogue with parents and with stakeholders. And my goal here in the next couple of months will be to put all that information together and provide it to the next leader and the next cabinet.
From City News, Mike.
My question has actually already been asked. If you want to move on, Paul, thanks.
From CHVN, Taylor.
Hi, good afternoon. With this Bill 64, a lot of people went through a lot of stress. We saw people quit their jobs. Other people were working with the province on how their jobs are going to be eliminated. We saw some worried parents. Now that Bill 64 is being scrapped, is there going to be any kind of apology made to these folks who went through this?
Well, with any legislation, it's not law until it's passed, and sometimes even after it's passed until it's proclaimed. So we hate to see people jumping to those conclusions, and it's unfortunate if those situations have happened. We put ideas out to Manitobans. Manitobans don't always openly and widely accept what we're proposing. And I think I would just say it's a sign that we've gone above and beyond in terms of consulting with Manitobans during this phase. We will continue to consult with Manitobans as we go forward. They clearly didn't like the governance model in 64, but at the end of the day, I would say most Manitobans want to have an improved education system here in Manitoba. We're still spending second or third highest per capita on students. Results aren't where we think they should be, and Manitobans have asked us to address that. And that's a work in progress, and we're going to continue that work.
And it's clear to see there's a lot of tension between education leadership and the provincial education department now. How are you planning to restore this, now damaged relationship?
Yeah, we have tremendous people working both in the department and as stakeholders in various roles across the province. And really got an opportunity to dialogue with them over the last couple of months, recognize the anxiety that Bill 64 has caused. I'm certainly prepared as a minister. My door is open. We do want to repair any bridges that we have maybe damaged in that journey, and I look forward to those discussions. And I would say, I think all of our stakeholders and all Manitobans want a better outcome for our students and provide them more success. And that's why we're here, and I'm more than happy to engage them and figure out how we achieve that.
From Global News, Shane.
Thanks for taking our calls, Mr. Minister. On June 14th, you held a press conference defending Bill 64, accusing opponents of spreading misinformation. But then on August 18th, Heather Stephenson said she'd scrap the bill. You clapped, and I'm wondering, were you clapping in support of that plan to scrap the bill? And then, if so, when specifically had you changed your mind on the bill?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and obviously there's nuances between my role as an elected official and my role here as a minister. And clearly, as a minister, I take my direction from the Premier and Cabinet. And it was just recently that Cabinet has determined the course of action for not just this bill, but other bills that are outstanding. So that's why we're here today to talk about that and talk about the future.
So I guess I'll just ask again, kind of, when you were clapping there on August 18th, were you at that time supporting scrapping the bill?
Well, I think we were all having, as elected officials, having conversations with Manitobans. Certainly, I recognize the challenges that Bill 64 had presented in terms of the governance model going forward. I can't give you any specific day when in my mind that I'd had determined myself which way to go. Again, as a cabinet minister, I would put my ideas forward to cabinet, and then cabinet would make their determination how they wanted to proceed on the various pieces of legislation.
From the Brandon Sun, Kyle.
Good afternoon, Minister. Throughout the last 6 months, there was a period of time where you characterized opponents of Bill 64 as a vocal minority. At this point, are you willing to walk back those comments since Cabinet has kind of decided to kill the bill based on the public response?
school. We're evaluating individual classrooms and individual schools in terms of having proper ventilation there. So clearly, we're working with school boards and individuals at central services. So there is a lot of work underway in terms of making sure we do have the proper and adequate ventilation.
From the Canadian Press, Sakia. Could you say again, please?
My question's been asked.
All right, thank you. We now return to the News Conference Theater.
Minister, there's lots of talk in some of these questions about the anxiety, the mental health stress. You admit it yourself that there's been a lot of stress associated with this. So what kind of reassurance can you give teachers, trustees, all school board employees about how long this hiatus and this break is going to happen? Is the 21-22 school year off limits? Is it going to remain? Can people take a breather for the next 8-10 months? How long is this pause?
Yeah, I'll just say our focus right now is clearly, the health and well-being of our students and staff. I mean, that's clearly our focus. We don't really know what this fourth wave is going to bring forward. To your question, we have provided school boards $5 million to make assessments on students in terms of where they're at in the system. We recognize there's probably going to be some recovery needed. We have set aside $40 million to assist schools in dealing with COVID, whether that be recovery or other things they may require in terms of COVID-related financial assistance.
So there's we could see some more reforms being proposed, another Bill 64 within the next school year.
Yeah, I can't again say what a new minister or a new premier or a new minister might want to bring forward, or cabinet. Again, my role here is going to be to provide the information. We're going to continue to consult with our stakeholders and parents over the coming months ahead. And again, this is a long-term journey when it comes to providing better success for our students. And that really takes a lot of dialogue, and we're committed to having that dialogue. I doubt government would rush forward with anything, but again, that's just my opinion.
Is it fair to say, Minister, that amalgamation is on the way?
Sorry?
Is it fair to say that, no matter what, the province is looking at amalgamating different school boards, centralizing decision-making, getting rid of school trustees, like the governance changes? Is that fair to say that that's still on the minds?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there was a recommendation in the K-12 report, whether the new leader and the new government decide to address that again. It's just too early for me to speculate on that.
I do have a question as well about the tax rebate that you mentioned earlier. So that's continuing. Was that predicated on some of those changes of consolidating decision makers, cutting jobs such as school trustees? To be able to afford to give those rebates to Manitobans?
I got to go back a little bit in history here. I think it was an early promise that we made as a government early on, probably prior to maybe even going back 2 elections, that we wanted to have a look at how education was funded in Manitoba. So I view those as 2 separate items because that promise was made quite some time ago. We were committed, and we were committed at the time, to some type of education reform. So that evolved a little later on, but we were happy to start to make that transition away from property tax owners.
Last question.
Minister, over the last several months, you've gone to great lengths to connect the MTS to the NDP and talked about the misinformation campaign, all the rest. Did this bill get co-opted by the politics of it? Did people really understand what Bill 64 was about, or did they just get caught up in messaging from certain factions of the legislature and other political movements?
Yeah, I certainly think there was an element to that. And it was quite unfortunate. I mean, we tried to bring forward a strategy that we think could provide better success for our students. And a very small part of one pillar spoke to the governance piece. And the governance piece was around Bill 64. And that really became the lightning rod for reform. So I'm hoping now that Bill 64 is behind us, we can move on and talk about student success. And that's really, I think that's what we all want. I think that's all of us combined, that's our priorities. How do we make sure that Manitoba students are successful? I think Bill 64, having that behind us, this opens up the doors to make sure we have a positive and a constructive and a collaborative dialogue as we go forward, because our outcomes, I think, are very similar.
Just one last question. One of the things that was brought or talked about at length, especially when the bill was introduced, was that Bill 64, eliminating the school districts, would put $40 million more in addition to what had been promised as $1.6 billion over 4 years back into the classrooms. Is that $40 million now just gone, or is that still going to be coming forward in some form or another on top of the other spending that had been promised?
Yeah, clearly that's going to be a little more difficult to achieve. But I would just say in broad terms, Manitobans want us to be accountable for what is taxpayers' money. They want us to provide good outcomes for our investment in our students. I think there's a pretty strong consensus around the province for that to happen. And I think even our stakeholders would believe in that as well. So that's a focus for us, is to work together to see how we can provide those outcomes. We are committed, though, to making sure that we're investing in K-12 education. This year alone, 1.57% increase. We also backfilled a 2% property tax, which is $23 million extra, came from the province to fund K-12 education. And you're right, we've also committed over and above that $1.6 billion over 4 years for education here in Manitoba. That's both on the operating side and on the capital side. And we're excited. We're in the process of building 20 new schools for Manitobans and for Manitoba educators. We've never had such a high investment in capital, $260 million this year in capital alone. So we are committed, despite what you may hear from opposition, to funding K-12 education today and into the future.
Mr. Cliff, one last?
No, we're good.